Hi everyone and welcome to Newegg TV. My name is Paul. Today I'm going to be doing an unboxing and overview of this massive and feature-packed motherboard from EVGA. This is the EVGA SRX Classified. So let's start off with a closer look at the retail box. This motherboard features the Intel C606 chipset, and that is maybe one that you've not heard of. That is because it's primarily used in workstation motherboards. This is designed for socket 2011 Intel Xeon processors. That's right, Xeon, not the typical Core i7, so like the 3930K, the 3960X, currently not compatible with this board. You want to go with a Xeon processor. There's a lot in the E5 series that are compatible. They're all available. The compatibility list is available on EVGA's website, but bear that in mind. It is also, of course, NVIDIA SLI ready. It also supports Crossfire X if you do want to set up some sort of high-end gaming slash computing system on this board. And of course, with NVIDIA, you get physics, as well as all of the other NVIDIA goodness featured by their cards. On the back of the box here we have a lot of features, but first off I'm going to point out this important note, which is letting you know that this motherboard is 13.6 inches by 15 inches, and that is a form factor that is exclusive to EVGA. They came out with it with the SR2. They call it HPTX, but you're definitely going to want to double check to make sure that your computer case is compatible with this form factor because it's very large. EVGA.com/FAQ should give you some more info on that. Now let's go down the laundry list of features. So again, Intel Xeon Dual QPI Socket 2011 processor, so you can fit 2 Xeon processors on this board. Intel C606 chipset. You get dual 6-phase digital PWM power delivery for each processor. 12 DIMM quad-channel DDR3 1600 MHz memory supported. So with one of the sockets you get 4 DIMMs, with the other socket you get 8 DIMMs. Enthusiast layout supporting 2-way, 3-way, or 4-way SLI as well as Crossfire X. You get 2 SATA 3 6 gigabit ports. You get 4 SATA 2 3 gigabit ports. These should be small Bs, not big Bs, bear that in mind. You also get 2 eSATA 3 6 gigabit per second ports. You also get 2 mini SAS ports on the board, EVGA V-Droop control, 2 Intel gigabit Ethernet ports, 8-channel high-def audio, 100% POS cap capacitors, so high-quality caps on the board. Onboard clear Cmos power and reset buttons, 10 USB 2.0 ports, 6 USB 3.0 ports, external clear Cmos, supports Bluetooth, EVGA Elite motherboard tuner. You get a FireWire header, dual 8-pin and 6-pin power connectors. I'll show you where those are if you're going to max out the board. You can deliver extra power to it. Also EVGA EVBot support. And then also package contents listed right there, which I'm about to show you. So let's get inside the box. Here is our accessories box, and that looks like everything in the box, aside from the motherboard. So here is your EVGA Classified SRX motherboard guide. Looks nice and clean. Inside here you'll find all the information you need about the board, parts and description, full board layout there indicating which parts are which. We also have an EVGA Classified SRX software and driver disk. You can always head over to the EVGA website to download the latest drivers, which is a good idea. You can also get BIOS updates there, which there have been a few for this board already, so BIOS updates are going to help maintain compatibility and make sure that everything's working correctly. This is sort of a visual guide, there you go. So you have a full layout of the board here on a single sheet. It's all colored. It's pointing out everything, what's what. I'm going to keep this on hand as I do the overview because I want to make sure I don't miss anything. We also have some adapters here. These are mostly all packaged, so let me get these out of their packaging and then I'll show you what's what. So here's all the accessories that were in packaging that I've removed. So I'm going to start off with these little guys, which are actually little plastic motherboard standoffs. They have adhesive on one side, so anywhere where you might, for instance, have a mounting point on the motherboard where you don't have a coordinated mounting point for a motherboard standoff on your case, you can install one of these and it will provide some additional support, and it does stick to the case, so it's nice to have. You get 6 of those total in this little baggie. Yes. You also have your SLI bridges here. They are included. Again, if you're going to go with Crossfire solutions, those bridges are usually included with the Crossfire compatible video cards. But you get a 4-way Crossfire bridge right there. I'm sorry, 4-way SLI bridge right there. Very nice. It's got a matte black PCB. You have a 3-way SLI bridge right there. which has a shiny, glossy black PCB. And then you get a two-way Sli bridge right there, which is one of the flexible ones that lets you install it to multiple different slot spacing depending on the slot width of your video cards. You also get a motherboard input-output shield right there. It's one of the kinds that has the squishy part on the back, which feels nice, and also provides electromagnetic shielding, so nice to have that. They've provided a few power adapters. These are simply Molex to double SATA connectors, so if you've got Molex and you need to plug in SATA stuff, you're covered with those. You get a total of 6 serial ATA cables. They're all SATA Rev 2 or 3 compatible. They're also backwards compatible, of course. Any version of SATA will work with these. They're all straight plugs. They've got clips on one end, which is nice. And 6 of those total. They're all black. Finally, some PCI slots adapters right here. So this one has 4 USB 2.0 ports and the corresponding internal USB 2.0 headers. And finally, this one right here gives you a couple USB 3.0 ports and an internal 20-pin USB 3.0 header. And now we're looking at the SRX motherboard itself, and this is the back of the motherboard. Just wanted to point out dual CPU sockets right there. Also, it's got sort of a semi-gloss black PCB, and most of the heat sinks on the board are mounted with Phillips head screws, so you can remove those if necessary, depending on what might become necessary as you do your build or if you're cleaning it in the future. There's a look at the front of the board. As you can see, it's primarily black and red color scheme, sticking with the EVGA color scheme that they like to go with. And I'm going to start off by pointing out the fan headers on the board. You get 7 of them total. They're all 4 pins, so PWM capable. You got a chassis fan up here, so that's 1. CPU fan right there, that's 2. Another chassis fan right there, that's 3. Another chassis fan down here, that's 4. Another chassis fan over here, that's 5. Another chassis fan right there, that's 6. And finally, your other CPU fan header over here, and that makes 7. Now let's go over all the details of the board. We're going to start off in the bottom right, and again, just as you can see, HPTX form factor, so very wide board. Again, make sure you got plenty of room in whatever case you're going to be building with. Down here at the bottom we have a clear Cmos button, so surface mounted here. There's another one of those that lives on the rear of the motherboard, so you can access it from here or from the back of the board. You get surface mounted power and reset buttons right there, which is very handy, especially if you're doing a test build outside of a computer case. This board has a dual BIOS, so you can use that simple switch here to switch back and forth between your BIOS options. There's the system fan header that I already pointed out. You got some front panel connectors right there that are color coded, and then you might notice all these little dip switches right there, and they're actually pretty clearly labeled there, so you can see CPU 0 DIMMs, CPU 1 DIMMs, PCI Express slots, and this is simply because due to the tremendous amount of I/O on the board, there's just the greater potential for possible conflicts. So what you can do with these for initial setup is you can actually switch off DIMM slots for your CPUs there and there, or you can actually switch off any of the 7 PCI Express slots, and you can use that to troubleshoot. Another reason you might use that is if you're, for instance, you want to set up a 3-way SLI or 4-way SLI configuration and you want to test all that, you can plug all the cards in, and then you can simply switch off the PCI Express slots that aren't currently being used, so you can easily drop down to 1 or 2 cards, so you can test the multiple configurations without actually having to remove the cards from the motherboard. So nice feature right there. Here is your USB 3.0 front panel connector, so 20-pin connector. You can use that for front panel on your case, or use it with that PCI back slot cover that came with the accessories. You get 3 USB 2.0 front panel headers right there. Each of those can control 2 USB 2.0 ports. You get a 1394B header right there, so you can use that for front panel or rear panel FireWire connectivity. Moving over to the left side of the board, we do have some audio connectors right here. So here's your standard front panel audio connector for mouse and keyboard. I'm sorry, for headphone and microphone. You also get an SPDIF digital header right there. And then we're going to move over to the PCI Express connectivity area, and you'll notice you have 7 PCI Express full-length 16x slots, and these are all wired up. They have additional PCI Express bandwidth because there is actually a PLX chip that's underneath that heat spreader right there, and that provides you additional PCI Express lanes. But just so you guys know what is what, I'm going to go over the bandwidth available on each port. So for video card configurations, you're probably going to have 2 slot spaced cards at minimum, so you're going to want to be installing those in your first, third, fifth, and seventh slots here. The first, third, and fifth can run at 16x or 8x, again just depending on the types of video cards you have installed and what PCI Express lanes you're using. The second, fourth, and sixth slot here can all run at x8, or can run at x8, x8, and x4. And then your 1, 3, 5 here can go 16x or 8x. Your lowest one here is always going to go at 8x. So bear that in mind. That's your PCI Express connectivity. Also right up above it you have a little sticker here, and this is Supplemental Power, which the sticker is all the way over. This is optional. I'm just going to break the sticker. There we go. Okay, optional PCI Express Power connector right there. Not necessary in all configurations, but depending on how many cards you have plugged in, you might need to provide some extra power to your PCI Express lanes. In which case, you will want to plug in a PCI Express Power connector right there, 6-pin. So the same kind that you would plug into a motherboard. I'm sorry, into a video card. Next up, we have a very large heatsink, you'll notice, with the EVGA logo that's covering the PLX chip, some of the power delivery up here at the top, also spreading down here to a lot of the lower components on the board, as well as what resides below the SRX logo there, which is actually your C606 chipset. The C606 chipset is controlling a variety of different things, but one of the big things it controls is your serial ATA connectors right there. So the top 2 connectors are SATA revision 3, 6 gigabit per second. Lower 4 there are SATA revision 2, 3 gigabit per second. And you'll notice that they are front-facing headers. They're not the angled ones, but that is simply because you actually have so much length on the board already that almost no video card will actually extend that far to where it might actually block those ports. So you should have easy access to all of those. Below that, a feature I neglected to mention earlier, you do have a debug LED, so you can use that in coordination with those dip switches if you're having any issues getting your system up and running. To the right of that, you have a 24-pin main motherboard power connector. And then another feature down here in the lower right, because they're side-facing, I didn't point them out yet. These are actually Sas connectors right there, so you can use that for extra storage if you have SAS-compatible drives. Each of these can support up to 4 drives with a splitter that is sold separately. So you notice the top one is SAS 0, 1, 2, and 3. The lower one is SAS 4, 5, 6, and 7. And they do have little protective covers if you're not going to use them that it comes with. Moving up the side of the board, you'll notice, well, since we have a lot of CPU sockets on the board, or 2, I guess, which is a lot compared to 1, which most motherboards have. So you do have a supplemental CPU power connector right over there. That's the 8-pin. Now bear in mind, since you have an 8-pin right there, you have another 6-pin right here, and that's simply, I'm not going to peel that label off, but this is another 6-pin PCI Express connector. You have one of those supplemental for either CPU socket, and it's made for overclocking, although the Socket 2011 Xeon processors are, at least as of the filming of this video, are locked for overclocking, but if you're using a higher power one, you can plug that in. Again, it is optional, so you should only need it if you're actually experiencing any difficulties getting your processor to perform properly. The 8-pin that's right above that, you will need to plug in, again, supplemental CPU power that's EPS 12 volt. Don't try to plug in a 8-pin PCI Express power plug right there. To the left of that, you have a black heatsink right there, and that's providing some heat dissipation for the power delivery modules for the CPU socket 0. So this is socket 0, and then the socket over here is socket 1. You'll notice here they've also given you a very specific guide on how to install a Socket 2011 processor, which is a little bit more complex if you're used to Sandy Bridge or Ivy Bridge 1155 sockets. There's an extra bracket on there, and you do want to make sure that you're careful when you're installing a CPU because they can be delicate. But I'm just going to peel this off. Oh, that came off with the socket cover. Oh, look, they're being very protective here with their sockets because not only do they have the external socket cover, which you can snap on like that, but they've got one inside the socket as well. So there's your 2011 socket. Again, Xeon E5 series Socket 2011 server processors for this board. Socket 0 over here supports quad channel memory. You actually get 8 DIMM slots for this. So if you're getting the board up and running, you'll want to populate all of the red slots, that being the red slots here for socket 0, as well as all 4 of the red slots here for socket 1. That'll give you quad channel. That'll make sure that your board gets up and running. We've got some extra little stickers here. This says EVGA recommends applying 1.65 volts or less when setting the DIMM voltage. And in fact, most DDR3 DIMMs that you'll find these days are 1.5 volt, which are compatible with this, but bear that in mind. You probably don't want to go above that line for your DDR3 DIMMs. Supports up to 8 gig DIMMs in each slot, which gives you a total of 12 times 8, which I believe is 96. Yes, 96 gigabytes total memory that you can have installed right here. And then also, again, quad channel, so make sure you buy your DIMMs in sets of, well, 8 to start off with this board, and then you have 4 more slots that you can add additional memory to. Now I do also want to point out, very top right of the board right here, you actually have some voltage read points. So those are all labeled out, and then you got 2 more over here for the socket 0, or for the 0 socket. Your VTT, I'm sorry, that's VTT for 1 and 0, and then all the rest of the read points over there on the right side. One other feature that I want to point out here at the top of the board, you might notice this little jumper right there. That's what that's called. It's a jumper. This is, again, it's a troubleshooting feature that you have on the board, which basically you can switch that jumper over and it will disable CPU socket 1, and that will, again, help you to troubleshoot. So if you're thinking that might be the problem, you can turn that off, try out your troubleshooting measures, and get your system up and running. Another sticker here over the other DIMMs. This motherboard supports quad channel memory, so you can choose any slot to insert your memory. Interesting. Next up, there's your CPU socket 1, so there's your second one. Again, you get a nice big black heatsink right there over your power delivery to keep those nice and cool. The aforementioned 8-pin and 6-pin connectors right there. So let me just turn that a little bit. So there's your 8-pin 12-volt EPS connector for CPU supplemental power, not a PCI Express 8-pin connector. But then you do have a 6-pin PCI Express connector right there for additional power delivery. Again, optional, so only plug that in if you need it. And that just about does it for the front of the board. Let me just delicately turn it on its side here so we can finish off with I/O. So here you got the fairly standard I/O panel for the back of your case. Got a couple USB 2.0, I should say 4 USB 2.0 ports right there. There's a wireless Bluetooth header right there. This is for your EVGA EVBot connector right there, if you have that. There's the aforementioned clear Cmos external connector. You get a PS2 connector right there for a mouse or a keyboard. You get 2 more serial ATA eSATA ports right there. That's on a Marvell controller. That's SATA Ref 3, 6 gigabit per second. 4 more USB 2.0 ports. There's your 2 gigabit Intel NICs. And then finally, you got your analog outputs here for the 7.1 channel audio outs, as well as a digital Toslink optical audio out. And that's going to wrap it up for this video, guys. Once again, this has been the EVGA SRX Classified Dual Socket 2011 motherboard for Intel Xeon server processors. I'm Paul with Newegg TV. If you enjoyed today's video, you can head over to our Newegg YouTube channel, and don't forget to subscribe for more tech videos. Thanks a lot for watching, and we'll see you next time.